Hello and welcome to the AssembleVerse v0.6 tutorial. In this tutorial, you'll learn how to build and simulate things in the AssembleVerse. First thing you'll do is sign in. You can fill out your email and username here and click sign up. You will have to check your email that you put in here. So it's kind of easier to do it online anyway. But if you already have one, you can click in here and go ahead and type in your username and password. Now to open up the menu, you're going to push the pause button on your left controller. It'll bring up this great menu. And you can push your left stick in and you'll go ahead and walk around different places. You can push in on your right stick and you'll actually be able to teleport as well. So you can teleport. And to turn, you can push in right and left on your right stick. Crouch by pushing in on your left stick. If you ever want your menu to come up back to you, just simply push the menu button once to toggle it off and again to toggle it back on. Okay, this is your main menu. You're able to modify your username and password and email here. You can also change an environment and look at other people's files in the marketplace. You can also customize your avatar. So if we click this, a whole little system pops up here and you're actually able to change how you look. Let's go ahead and change something that we'll be able to notice. See, so now it automatically adjusts everything in real time. If your character doesn't look right, go into settings and click calibrate. And what this will do is it will set your height equal to the height of the avatar and everything will look good. A few other things here are you can modify your music and sound volume. You can change how detailed the textures are in the game here, and you can change how the parts look in terms of the meshes. The other two things are your files. So if you click this, you're able to see any scenes that you have for this current scene in the Scenes tab. And then in Assemblies, you're able to pull in all of your different assemblies that you have ever made. And click on a file, and then once you're in this menu, you can click Open, and it'll open it in the Builder. Okay, so here we are in the Builder. It's its own little island where you can experiment. So a few things with the Builder. If you push your pointer fingers both in at the same time, you're actually able to zoom in and out of the Builder. You have 4 different scales that your parts can spawn at. This is the biggest scale, the building scale. And then you go into vehicle scale, and then you go into person scale, and finally you go into like handheld part scale. And I'll show you what this means in a second. If you want to change this scaling on and off, go into your settings, and under Builder, you uncheck this box. And now you'll always be in the scale that you're in here. Okay. See? To dispense a part, what you have to do is you have to press the grip on your controller, which is the middle finger button, basically. That will pull up the dispenser menu. The dispenser menu has the parts that you can dispense. On the left, you also have all of the different materials you can pick. So if you click in on your pointer finger, you can change the material that you see here. Okay? As so. And then on the right, you have all of your tools that you can use in the Builder. So to dispense a part, you can point at one and you see the names highlighted there, and then you squeeze in with your pointer finger and it'll spawn into the scene. Now here's where the scale comes into play. Say you have a part in here. Now you scale up into the next scale. Now we're in vehicle scale. So let's pull in the same part, and suddenly it is 4 times as big. Here's the person scale part, and here's the vehicle scale part. To attach 2 parts together, all you do is take one part and you put it near the surface of another part that you want to attach. And you can rotate it however you want. You can align it however you want, and then just let go and it will attach. To detach a part, You have to be holding it, and then you push your trigger finger on the part that you're holding, and it will detach. To delete a part, press and hold the trigger finger down, and it'll be deleted. To copy a part, hold the part and press B or Y to copy the parts in your hand. To freeze a part in midair, push X or A, and now it will be, it'll have this highlighter around it, and you won't be able to move it when you're simulating. If you want to share a design, you can go into your file details, and if you click this button, it'll show up in the marketplace. So just like that, you've shared it, and if you ever want to not share it, you can easily do that as well. Here you can change a name of your file and also put a description for whatever you want people to know about your file. You can also add files. So if I click Add File, it pulls up all of the files that you have available, and you can go ahead and select one. It'll pull up the name, the author, and the description. And then if I want to bring it in, I simply pull in, press in on my trigger, point at it, and push Select. And lo and behold, this is now in the same scene, and I can manipulate all the objects just fine. When you want to simulate your file, you go into the simulator and you click Start, and everything will come to life. If things break, you might have your joint strength set too low. So press the pause menu again. These settings are only for when you're simulating. You can see you can change gravity, you can change whether you fly, and you can change the strength. So if you change this all the way to infinite, nothing will ever break. Strong is you need a strong force to do it. Normal is generally pretty good, but apparently in this case, things are breaking. So let's go ahead and click Reset. Now you can see all of our things are actually working correctly. You can interact with any object in your scene, and it will behave like it should. Parts that get damaged actually now produce smoke. You can see this part is actually smoking now, and it's telling me that it's partly damaged. And if it gets damaged enough, it will actually smolder. So let's go ahead and now it is smoldering. It is less than halfway damaged. If the part ever gets too damaged, it'll actually be destroyed. And that'll happen with everything. If you don't want this feature, you can turn joint strength to infinite, and that won't happen. Things will stop breaking. When you want to end your simulation, go ahead and just click stop. Everything will go back to how it was before. So I'm going to show you what the tools do. Hold in on your menu, and you'll have all these tools here. The first one is a pencil. If you grab the pencil, it'll come into your hand. And now if you hover over a part and push in on your trigger, you'll be able to color it that color. And this works for any parts. Okay? If you ever want to undo or redo a change, that's what these buttons are for on your hand. You can go ahead and undo those changes. Redo also works. Okay, the next one is the eraser. The eraser allows you to erase a part. Same, you'll have to push the trigger, but if you're over a part and you press the trigger, the moment you let go out of that part, it will become erased. So you can literally erase whatever you want, and now it's gone. Super glue will allow you to attach two things together. So what you have to do is you have to hover it between two things that you want. And now if you click the trigger again, it will attach these two things rigidly. If you want to freeze a part in midair, there's actually a tool you can use. You can also use your button, but you can also use this and it does the same thing. Now this part will be frozen in midair when it spawns into the scene. The next is the part separator. The separator is able to remove any connection between two parts. So you hover it over the parts you want, and again, you push the trigger, and it'll remove these parts. So if I press simulate, You can see all these parts are now removed. The next is the device programmer. Point it at any device and it'll bring up a menu where you can program which buttons will turn on and activate the device or deactivate the device. This is different for each different device, and I'll go through all of them later on. The final one is the grow or shrink ray. This will let you grow things. So if you point it at a object and you push B, it will grow, and you push the other button, it will shrink. And it will only shrink as far as the smallest scale, and it will only grow as far as the biggest scale. Let's look at some of the materials that you have available. You have plastic, an assortment of plastic materials. Up here you can change the type of material you're using. And then you have an assortment of different metallic materials involving gold, copper, steel, carbon fiber, which is one of my favorites. You have an assortment of wood materials as well. You have stone, including dirt, sand, marble, and shale. You have various cloth materials, including leather, different cloths, and camo colors. You have glass. So these are very transparent when you put them into the scene. So to select one again, you click the trigger, and now you can put one in the scene, and you can see it's very transparent. But it has that beautiful, colorful sheen, and it makes it very, very cool to look at. Elementals are kind of special. You have rubber, which is great for tires because they bounce. You have a hologram material. You have ice, which can slide. You have cloud, which sort of adds on itself to make a cloud. And then you have these sort of cool looking lava lamp textures to play with, right? So it just creates a really cool kind of lava material. I'm still working on these as well. Finally, you have neon. Neon parts can glow. So if you look here, you can see it actually glows. And you can see we have kind of that neon material in the rocket here as well. You also have a variety of parts you can use. So up in the top corner here, you can change what kind of parts you see. And you have blocks, you have rounds, you have triangular pieces, you have channels, which are good for curved. You have these, which can be used for planes, slants. You have a variety of beams that you can use. You have various connectors. These connectors are primarily for construction, and these are great for wheels and axles. You have some unique ones that give you some nice hinge and access points. And then you have an assortment of devices. And then finally, at the end, you have a whole mech that you can customize, you can take apart, do whatever you want with. Devices let you interact with your surroundings. They can be used for competitions or just for having fun. What you do if you want a device, you pull it in from the device menu and you just click one of these devices. Motors are great for spinning. Now, if you want to control any of your devices while in a simulation, simply grab while in the simulator and you'll have this little joystick. To program a device, simply access the device programmer, hover over the part, and click in. This will pull up the programmer for that device. Motors have a ramp speed, which defines how fast they go up and down to the input. Next, you can define various inputs that the motor will spin at. So by changing the slider from left or right, you can determine whether it moves clockwise or counterclockwise. By clicking this input here, you have a series of controller buttons, steering and throttle, and then down here you can actually control any value using part of your body. The null input is what the motor will do without any input from you at all. So in this case, if I want the motor to spin just regularly, I can go ahead and define that. And now if I click simulate, you'll see the motor spins without me controlling it. If I want to add inputs, I can simply click add input, And then let's go ahead and add an input for A and an input for B. For A, let's make it move clockwise, and for B, let's make it move counterclockwise. And then if we don't push an input, let's have it be 0. So now, if I go back into my view, I click Simulate, the motor will be off. But now I'll grab my controller by pressing the grips, and if I push A, it'll move clockwise. And if I release A, it'll stop. If I push B, it'll move counterclockwise, and if I release, it'll stop. Just like that. It's very similar for other devices as well. For example, the servos have a ramp speed as well. The continuous motion check mark is really good for things like turrets where you want to nudge your angle. You don't want it to go to a certain input. But for example, let's go ahead and add a few inputs as well. Let's make A turn clockwise at 75 degrees, and let's make B go all the way to -90. Now, if I were to simulate, you can see it's blank. I grab my controller, A goes to that 75, and B goes to -90. You can see that the motor is also turning, and that's because it will control all the things that you program if you're not sitting in a driver's seat. The elbow servo can only go to plus or minus 90 degrees, so that is a limitation of using this kind of servo. So now if we push, you can see both of our servos are moving how we want. For pistons, you can define how far out or in the piston extends. We give you negative values here just in case you want to flip your input. Let me give you an example of when you would want to flip your input. So let's say you have a joystick, and let's say when you move it down, you want the piston to go out. You can also have a input without using the default value. If you don't use the default value, it will act as a toggle. In this case, A will toggle it off and B will toggle the rocket on. But it'll keep going as long as I don't push A. And now it'll just keep going. It'll go as much as it wants until I push A. And you can see now it turned off. Let's go ahead and program a gyroscope. You can check whether or not you want to keep the rotation. If this is on, then it will keep whatever rotation you have it set to at the beginning of the simulation. So you can see it really wants to remain upright. If it's like wobbling, you can tune the damper, and if you turn the damper up, it will wobble less. And if you have something that really, there's a lot of mass to it, you can turn your strength up as well. So these two settings really are for fine-tuning how responsive your gyro is. Your gyroscope actually has 3 axes here. So this axis tells you which direction, and the colors correspond to the programmer. So if we look at the programmer, we have red. So red is this red axis here. It's going to control roll. Green is the pitch axis, and you can see it will control this way. And yaw will control left to right motion. And you can see I can rotate it however I want. And what's nice is I still have keep rotate on, so it's still going to want to remain upright. So this is great for planes, for example. The last one I have here in this list is suction. Suction will trigger whenever you have an input. So if we have A as the suction trigger and we have 1 set to it. So if I'm holding it, I can grab my trigger, and if I push A, it'll suck in. And if I release A, it will suck out. So I'm actually able to pick up things with the suction cup this way. Okay, so anything that you grab will actually also, you'll be able to control that with the hand that you grab it with. So in this case, A can control it without a controller. It'll just work. I control anything that I'm grabbing. So if I grab the whole thing, you can see I can actually turn it on using that hand. I want to talk about the kind of plane materials that you have at your disposal. You have a wing. This wing has an up and a downside. So to program a wing, you'll actually program these flaps, the thing that says up and down. So when you go to the programmer, you're able to select which wing this is. And for the outer flap, you can define an input. And that input will raise or lower the wing. And then this way you can raise it and lower it just like a regular wing. This wing is really made for the front of your plane. And what you can do is if you push the B button to copy it, you can just flip it over and now you have the wingspan for a full airplane. This is the front of the plane. The back of the plane will need stabilizers, and that's what these are for. The smaller wing is a stabilizer, and generally you have one on the back for each side, and then one in the front. Let's go ahead and build our body. What we can easily do is take one of the basic blocks and copy it, and then put that block on itself, and then copy it again. And we'll do that only twice more, and suddenly you have something long enough for a plane. We'll go ahead and put both wings on the ends here. I guess I'm going to go with a little half step here. It doesn't matter. You can also put the wings on the side. That's also kind of cool. So let's actually put them on the side like that. Okay, now that we have our wings, we can go ahead and program them. So we'll take the programmer for the ailerons. We're going to have, for the main flaps, these are the flaps that will turn the plane. Generally, we want that to be the right stick. We'll make it 50, and we'll make this one the right stick, and make that one 50 as well. This is because we want them to go in opposite directions, but one of them is flipped over. These inner flaps are great for braking. So what we can do is take the programmer and add an input to toggle it to brake. What I usually like doing is using X and Y, where Y is going to trigger the brake, and then X is going to put it back to normal. So if I have my right stick, you can see the wings are following that angle properly. And then if I toggle the brake, you can see the wings are lifting up, which will actually push the plane down and act as brake flaps, just like in a real plane. Now let's do the back wings. The back flaps are very similar. In this case, we want them to control the up and down motion. In this case, let's use the left stick to do that. And we're going to move this down. Since this is the down wing, we want it to move up this way when we push down on the joystick. So actually, we're going to go this way. Finally, this one we want to move with yaw, and I'll go ahead and use the left stick for this. Let's use a new assembly called a propeller. So these propellers are pitched in two different directions. This is actually designed intentionally because the pitch determines how to rotate it. And to counteract the rotational forces, the real rotational forces of the motors are applying to the body, we will want to rotate this one direction and this guy the opposite direction. You want the air to be pushed this way, which means you want this propeller to rotate in this way clockwise. So that's why I have this one at clockwise. This propeller is pitched the other direction, and you want it to move counterclockwise. So we'll add a counterclockwise input here. The propellers are hitting the ground, though. That's essentially the problem. So to prevent the propellers from hitting the ground, we need wheels. So if you have these parts, you can go ahead and use one of these axles. This side will let you spin freely, and this side can attach to a wheel. So you can easily put it here, and then you can just attach it to the other side like that. Now the back wheel, we probably need some sort of back wheel because the damage is actually going towards all these parts in the back when they collide. Now, if I wanted to copy just this part of the plane, it'll be a little tricky. But if I use the separator, I could separate out this part of the plane. Oh, we'll just go ahead and put some wheels on it like that. We're going to put it all the way on the end here of our little runway to give ourselves enough space. The propellers could be going a little too strongly, basically, but at least you can see it works. The last thing is you might want to also be able to pilot your plane, and that's where these driver seats come in. So if you add one of these onto your plane, you can actually teleport onto it, and now you are facing the direction, and you will actually move with your plane. When you're driving, if you crouch, you can actually go kind of like in this view that's like outside of your perspective, and that's nice for various things, but that's what this trigger is for. So you can be either very far away or you can be totally close. But the spectating distance will actually freeze your rotation, so it's a nice way to view your assemblies instead of being rigidly attached. Residence lets you spawn in a person. So the resident actually has its own controller as well that you can program. This one shows you all the different kinds of things that you can change. So you can make them look however you want. You can change their body color, give them a cool shirt, give them some shoes, and a cool hairstyle. Great, and there he is. And now he is just like us. They currently are very weak and won't actually do much. They'll just turn into ragdolls, but they're fun to kind of pick on. A proximity sensor will allow you to detect when something is to the right or left, or up or down of the sensor and how far away it is. We can actually program our devices to use the sensor outputs. So to access the proximity data, we'll go to real-time data. Theta is the right or left angle, phi is the up or down angle, r is the distance away the object is, and fire is a special parameter that the proximity sensor can tune to turn on or off a switch given something is close enough to you. Theta will allow us to move the motor. So now theta is going to be positive if it's on the right side of the device and negative if it's on the left side. If the object is to the right of the device, I want the motor to move clockwise to face it. So we're going to go ahead and make the motor move in a positive direction. The servo, if it's positive here, we want the servo to look up, which is going to be a counterclockwise motion. So then we know that we want it to be moved like this. We also want continuous motion to be on so that whatever input here shifts the angle and doesn't actually set the absolute angle for the servo. Okay, so now it should actually be able to follow things like this ball. Now, if we want it to actually fire the cannon, this is the cannon. The cannon is able to fire something on a trigger. In this case, that's what we're going to connect prox fire to. Prox fire can actually be determined by the fraction between the minimum proximity and the maximum proximity. In this case, we want it to be pretty close to the device before it fires. See? And it actually aimed and fired at the closest thing. This mech already has all of the controls programmed in. What you do need, though, to control it is the special mech controller here. So if I were to put a controller in this scene and freeze it in place, we'll be able to use the mech. The final thing that is helpful for the mechs is to use a gyroscope. If we put the gyroscope on there and then make it keep the rotation and set the strength to about double what it usually is. Now, if you grab these controllers, you're actually able to move the mech around. A scene is a collection of separate assemblies that you want to interact with each other. To create a new scene, just click Files and click New Scene, and it'll open your scene. To add assemblies into this scene, close out that scene info window, go to your assemblies. Now what you can do is you can just find the assembly you want, and then to be able to pull it into the scene, just distance grab like you're dispensing a part, hover over the object, and you'll be able to cast it onto the ground. Voila, it's in the scene. And now when you go to the simulator, you'll be able to click Start, and it will work just like any other assembly. In this way, you can make a huge variety of complex assemblies that you can play around with and interact with each other. All of the same damage mechanics are operational. You should experience everything that you can just in the regular scene, including part breaking, flying, piloting, and everything. What's great about scenes is that if you update an assembly, any scene that has that assembly in it will also be updated automatically. For example, I'm removing the explosive that I have put in the middle of this ramp here. And now, if I save and exit, the scene that also contains this file gets updated automatically. I don't have to do anything. And just like before, it runs splendidly. I love the destruction mechanics. You can also take a photo of your scene to show people what it's all about. So if you go back to the scene info panel, which will be here, the scene that's open will have this open tag. You're able to edit the name of your scene as well as a description. And if you click Take New Photo, you'll get a camera where you'll be able to position the camera and then just push down on your trigger finger to take a photo of your scene. If you save and close, that photo will update and everyone will be able to know what your scene is all about. Thanks everyone for watching this tutorial video. I hope you learned something and we'll see you next time.